Okay, cool. All right, Aaron, you're in. As I kick off, guys, if you have questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to pop them in the chat and I will answer them as best as I can as we go along. The session's going to be really, really interesting. It's one of my favorite sessions to deliver. Annalise, you saw this one live, right?
I did. It was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, and we went over time, didn't we, actually, in that one? I'll get you back on time today. Don't stress, because I know it's evening. But yeah, it's a really, really good session. You're going to get a lot of insight into how your mind works and, what some of those barriers are to success around the paradigms that we have as we grow up. So it's going to be really, really interesting. While I'm still admitting a few people, I'll just introduce myself. So my name is Ush, who's your presenter for today. I'm an EQ coach and EQ expert. I've been in the emotional intelligence coaching space now for 8 years, and I run my own business called EQ Academy. So if you guys want to check that out or you want some more information, the website is actually eq.academy. Okay, so if you guys want to know a little bit more about what we do. The business that I have founded, we work with people all over Australia and also the globe and really develop leaders, develop entrepreneurs, business owners, um, and really just get them more emotionally intelligent and set up for success. So that's pretty much what we do. And my background is actually very high IQ, believe it or not, even though we're talking about EQ today. And my background is that of a lawyer and barrister. I was born in the UK and I've been in Sydney now for about 16 years. So I think you might hear a little bit of a Pommy accent still in the presentation with a bit of an Aussie twang. All right, I think that's everyone in the room. Is there a cap on the numbers?
There may be an option at the bottom of the screen that you may be able to click on, which should say like disable waiting room, and that would just let anyone who had the link to
Oh,
join.
that'd be amazing because otherwise I'm going to be,
Continuing to click.
yeah, where do I find it? Sorry.
At the bottom, if you see the bar at the bottom of the Zoom, you should be able to click somewhere. I think there's a little up arrow potentially above participants, somewhere on there,
Oh, yeah. Um,
and it should say disable waiting room.
no,
Okay.
I don't think I've got that option because I didn't set it up probably.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay. All right. Let's go. All right, so we want to talk about removing limiting beliefs by increasing your self-awareness. And the main topic I want to talk about today is this inner critic that we have, right? So every human, every person, whether you are a leader or a business owner or not even a leader or a business owner or an employee, just a human being, so to speak, we have an inner critic. And the inner critic is this voice that keeps popping up into our heads, right? And it will say things to us that we sometimes don't want to hear. And it might say you're not good enough. It might say things like, you're not confident enough, and that's a really bad idea, and you shouldn't do that. And we all have that inner critic, and that's the sort of session I want to talk about today is how do we recognize that voice? What is that voice? And how do we turn it so that it's really not going to hinder us in our growth in terms of what we're doing? This could be really distracting as people ping in. So if I sound like I'm losing my train of thoughts, it's because I'm accepting participants, okay? So we all have two voices within ourselves, okay, that are constantly there. And we've got one that is nurturing, and then we've got one that's going to lift us up. And There's one that weighs us down, and that's that voice of that inner critic that we're talking about. But it's really important to know that both the voices that you hear have a role to play. Okay, so when we talk about this inner critic, it's not going to be a case of I need to remove this voice, because it's not going to be able to be removed. It's going to be a case of how do I listen to it? How do I get the messages that I want and elicit that information clearly? The inner nurturer voice that we have is the one that helps you bring about self compassion and encouragement. And then we've got the inner critic, right? The other voice, which is the one that helps you recognize where you've gone wrong and also what you need to do to set things right. So, what is this inner critic voice that I keep talking about? The definition of it that I like to say is it's a well integrated pattern of destructive thoughts that are towards ourselves and also can be towards other people too. And it's almost like a nagging voice or a thought, and it makes up this internalized dialogue that is the root of much of our self-destructive behavior. So if we go back and look at our past and go, right, I haven't done things a certain way or I haven't met the expectations, more often than not, there's going to be that inner critic voice that's accompanied that potential failure or what you see as failure in your life or a pivot moment in your life. It isn't an auditory hallucination. People sometimes say, is it something I'm hearing? Is it external of me? But actually, what it is it's actually your thoughts that are verbalized by yourself, that are within your head. Okay. And what happens is those thoughts start forming into an anti self that could potentially discourage you from acting out in your best interests. And I think we've all had that, right? I know I've had that nagging voice, that inner critic voice come up so many times throughout my life, and it still happens now and then. So, a reminder as we go through this session that it's not a case of how do I remove it, it's a case of how do I become aware of what that voice is. Let's have a look at what the role is, okay? So we've identified what that inner critic is. It's that voice that's inside your head, well patterned, formed thoughts that you're verbalizing, and the role of the inner critic. So it's actually there to protect you, believe it or not, even though you sometimes go, I don't like this, I don't like the way that it's making me feel. The role of that is to really protect you from external judgment and also rejection. It can sometimes start pointing out to you, words or thoughts like you're not enough. And what it really wants to do, this inner critic, is that it wants to create enough discomfort and fear inside of you where you're going to feel that, you're going to be rejected, or it will either motivate you to do more or to do better. But basically, it's almost like a house alarm. If you imagine that, like it's a warning to go, hey, you're entering new territory that's really unknown for you, and as a result of that, I'm going to speak up and I'm going to let you know that something's going to be going on, and you're going to be out of your comfort zone. I do like to think that it is also a nice thing, even though we call it a harsh thing, that's the inner critic, because it also can be a bit like a guardian angel that can stand over you and it protects you from pain. And it really, really hopes to keep you feeling comfortable for as long as possible. Now, interestingly enough, I want you guys to give some thought to this question I'm going to ask in a minute. I was running the session, a live session, not a virtual session, pre-COVID. And one of the things we got the guys to do in the room was actually draw out or paint or color what their inner critic actually looks like, and to really give it an image, yeah, because the fact that you can give your inner voice an image, whatever that image looks like for you, it just means that your brain will start associating it quicker. So when these voices come up for you, that it can be quite destructive, you'll be able to associate it with the image. So your brain will automatically be able to go there, and you'll be able to listen to that voice. Because as we raise our EQ, the goal is to become more and more aware of our inner critic voice so that we can do something about it. So what I would like you guys to do in the chat function is put down what image you get when you think of your inner critic, or what colors come to mind if you were going to give this, if you were going to bring it to life, I guess. Yeah. If you guys want to just start sharing that, that would be amazing. Give you a couple of seconds to do that. Yeah, a red devil. It's a really common one. Yeah. What else do you guys visualize? Think about the times that you've heard your voice. Green color comes out, then I saw grass. Ah, Jana, that is beautiful. I like that it's got something really positive at the end of that. That's amazing. What else do people see? Gray, Arnie, thank you. Maria Blue, yeah. A wicked little person releasing black energy. Eileen, I feel you. Yep, I hear that. What else? It's really important you guys share this because it's a really good way to raise your self-awareness and start creating that image. Um, James, you said, oh, it has to be black because it's not a nice thought. As for an image, probably myself not looking the best. That's interesting. Yeah, cool. Mine was actually purple. I'm from the UK, but does anyone remember the Cookie Monster? Probably not, right? But if anyone does, you can Google it. But
Yep.
yeah, mine looked a bit like the Cookie Monster, and it had like sharp teeth. And when I started to associate this image, to my inner voice. I mean, the Cookie Monster also has a little bit of a love and happy feel to it, so it did have that. And then someone said that it's that, the emoji we get, the purple devil emoji as well. A lot of people see that too. So yeah, just give some thought to what you actually do see, um, when you hear this inner voice, okay, as we go through this session. So the most common themes and colors are devil, definitely, black, red, purple, and green. So they're the sort of the main associations that humans have, um, yeah, with this, which is fascinating. Now, this is really important to know. This inner critic is going to start showing up when you establish new goals in life, okay? So whether that's going for a new job, a promotion, a new relationship, or a breakdown in a relationship, just, whenever you've got a pivot in your life or something happening in your life, that's when this voice is going to start coming up. It's also going to happen when you set goals that exist outside of your comfort zone, and also when there's uncertainty as well. Okay, so anytime there's uncertainty, it doesn't sit well with your inner critic, and that's when it's going to start screaming at you and giving you voices. Okay, so mine has come up just to share. Like, when I set my business up 8 years ago, it came up then. I've got a 10-year-old. When I became a mom, it came up then. When COVID hit and I was trying to pivot my business and do different things and grow my business, scale my business, it came up then. I just hired my second employee for the business last week, and that was a big milestone. It came up then. So it will always start coming up when you are outside of your comfort zone, okay? And it's really normal. Again, I just want to hammer the point that it's really important for you guys to start listening and be aware of when that voice comes up. Um, your inner critic, as I mentioned, doesn't appreciate things when it's uncertain, and it also wants to avoid uncertainty. So it doesn't like it if it doesn't know the how. So let's say you want to start a new business venture, or you are expanding your goals and you still haven't worked out how to get to that goal. Even though you know in your heart of hearts you can get it, that's when the inner critic is going to come. And one of my favorite sayings is, just start to walk and the way is going to appear. Like, it will just happen. But if we worry about the how, the inner critic's going to start coming in more and more. Yeah. And what it will do, it will start to fill your mind with all of those doubts that you've got, in order to deter you from experiencing potential pain when things can go wrong.
So Ush, people are already starting to ask questions. So Adith is asking, how do you actually power through that in the moment you get the inner critic? How do you get through it?
Yeah, we're gonna cover that for sure.
Brilliant.
Absolutely. Actually, while you guys are there in the chat, can you just write down for me as we move through this presentation, which I will share the strategies, but what sort of things do you hear your inner critic say? If you guys wanted to share that. And the reason I want you guys to share that, if you're happy to openly, of course, is because you'll realize that a lot of them are really common. Yeah. So your inner critic, yes, it's personal to you, but it does actually have recurring themes for everyone. So yeah, that was a stupid thing to do. Yeah, that was definitely mine. Mine was you're not good enough or you're not smart enough. Yeah, that was a big one for me as well. Um, don't take risks. Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah, do you deserve this? Yeah, yeah. I love that. So as I'm going through, I will check the chat. Definitely, start writing those down, and I'll come back to that in a second, and I'll give you some strategies. So where does it come from? So my background is also in neuro leadership, so I'm really fascinated about how our brain works. So a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about today is that, and some techniques to rewire. But we do have nagging thoughts constantly that are coming up. But what we're not aware of is those nagging thoughts and the inner critic is actually just the tip of the iceberg. Okay, everything that's causing them are actually stuff that is below the iceberg, and you've seen that, below the iceberg sign, um, where the success is at the top and all of the stress that you feel is at the bottom. Okay. I'm just going to skip this bit because I want to make sure we cover um, enough. So there, I just want to cover the 7 types of the inner critic voices for you guys. So as you guys are writing in the chat, yeah, exactly. There are heaps of people, other people doing the same thing. I can be seen negative. Yeah, I love that. It's great. Adith, yeah, you may not have the skills. I say that all the time to myself as well, but we acquire those skills as we go along. So, 7 types of inner critic. As we go through this, have a think about the ones that you resonate with, okay? So, one of the first types is the perfectionist. So, this is the critic that you're going to get in your mind that's going to get you to do things really perfectly by setting really, really high standards for the things that you produce, okay? And it sometimes has difficulty saying that something is good enough. It tries to make sure that you fit in and you're not going to be judged or rejected. And its expectations probably reflect those of people who have been important to you in the past. Yeah. So, if you've had people in your past that have been quite perfect or turned you into perfectionist, they're going to sort of prominently play up. The perfectionist is a common inner critic. You see that in high achievers. I always laugh at Paula, right, as well. I'm like, Paula, just stop. I think if Paula's going to have any of them, it's going to probably be in one of these as well, where, you just strive constantly and you think that, it's never enough and it's never perfect. The second one is an inner controller. So this one is where it tries to control your impulses, okay? Any impulses that you've got, that your inner critic is going to start talking. And I know when I coach one-on-ones, a lot of this has come up now that we're back in lockdown for 2 weeks, right? So I've had people go, you know what, I can't train, I don't know how I feel, and all this inner critic stuff is coming up for them. Um, and what happens is your inner critic is secretly feared that what you're doing, you're not going to be able to contain it and it's going to out of control. So it tends to be harsh and shames you privately, so that it protects you from external judgment, okay? And it's motivated to try and make you a good person, because it doesn't think that you are good enough already in the perfect divine being that you are. So inner controller is one that we get a fair bit as well. And you can have a combination when you look at these 7, a combination of the 7 as well. So it might not just be one that you have. Taskmaster, this is a common one for entrepreneurs, or if you're, going for that promotion, you're in a stressful job and trying to get noticed. It can come up a fair bit there, where this critic wants you to work really hard. It wants you to be successful. And the fear of this inner critic voice is that you're going to be mediocre or lazy. Yeah. And that you will be judged a failure if you're not pushed and you're not keep going. So this one definitely comes up a fair bit when we're working. It can be quite sporadic as well if you've got a tight deadline or a project or a lot of things going on where you feel overwhelmed. That's another time that the taskmaster can come in as well. You get something called the underminer. So, the underminer is a critic that tries to undermine your self confidence and self esteem so that you don't take risks. Okay. It will make direct attacks on your self worth. And what it wants you to do is to stay small and not take chances where you could be hurt or rejected. And it's afraid of you being too big or too visible and not being able to tolerate judgment or failure. So, all of those things that you guys said in the chat earlier is to do with that, yeah, where you feel that, if you shine your light too bright, if you were really successful, then what will people think? I remember when I started my business 8 years ago, a lot of my friends were like, Ush, you're crazy. You're giving up, a career that's pretty good in the legal industry, and you're risking that to be a coach and a trainer in the space of emotional intelligence where it wasn't really heard about or spoken about 8 years ago. But in my heart of heart, I really knew this was really, really good content. It was something that people needed to learn to grow and really build their emotional intelligence and awareness of their emotions and how they feel. And I remember people going, why are you doing it? Why are you doing it? It used to be this constant question that I used to get asked. And now I have to say, people will say to me, Ush, how did you do it? Like they just want to know how the business was set up, how we got our clients, how we got all the things that we did. And it's just fascinating that when you are on that journey, people will doubt you. Yeah, not only yourself, but people around you will start to doubt you and challenge you. And it's really important to have that self belief and hold that firm as best as you can. Number five is the destroyer. So, the destroyer is probably one of the most dangerous ones that you can get because the destroyer starts to make attacks on your fundamental self worth. And this is where, if you aren't aware of your inner critic, it can lead to anxiety, it can lead to depression, it can lead to, the starts of mental ill health. And what this does is it just starts to shame you. So it's not a good voice. It makes you feel inherently flawed and not entitled to just basic understanding or respect. And it can come, but not always, from early deprivation or trauma. Yeah. So people will be like, no, Ush, I haven't had trauma, but they just haven't actually thought about it as trauma or dealt with it. So trauma can come in many forms. It doesn't have to be the trauma that we are so used to hearing about, abuse and neglect. But trauma can be in so many other ways, whether you've been gaslit, whether you've dealt with narcissism, all of that stuff can really affect your inner voice as a destroyer. Even just something simple as not having the right partner or friends to support your journey can trigger the destroyer. So yeah, it's definitely something to think about. And if you have it, you've got to be able to listen to that voice and challenge it, okay, as best as you can. And then you've got the guilt tripper. This is the one where the critic is stuck in the past and it's unable to forgive you for wrongs that you have done to either hurt people or failures that you've personally had. It's really concerned about relationships and your relationships with people, and it holds you to a standard of behavior that can potentially be prescribed by the people around you. So, your community, your culture, your friends, your family. And what it does is it tries to protect you from repeating past mistakes by making sure you never forget or feel free. And funny enough, I read a story this morning on LinkedIn, which actually deals with the guilt tripper really nicely to share with you guys. There's these two guys that have just got, I think, almost $8 million in funding for a app that they're creating. And it's in the mindset space, which is definitely very crowded, but they have based their app on hypnotherapy. So they've got different types of hypnotherapists that are going to be recording sessions, pre-recorded sessions on the app that you can then purchase to help you with a range of things. And they had an interview, they're two brothers, and they did an interview for the Australian Financial Review. And they actually said in there that their first business that they set up was an absolute failure, like a massive failure. And what happened was they created an app that was called, I think it was called Closet or Clover or something. And it was an app where you can rent and share clothes from other people if you needed to hire them. And they said they had spent 12 months building this thing, this prototype, invested a shit ton of money in it, and it never went anywhere. It didn't launch, like it just didn't work. And they said they had, the equivalent of a guilt tripper. And when they came up with this idea of the hypnotherapy business, they were sharing that their past failure, or what they perceived as failure, was interrupting them, and kept coming up for them regularly. And they had to push past that and go, look, yes, we failed the first time, but also by doing that, we've learned so many lessons, like so many lessons that we've learned, that we can take in the new venture that we're doing now. So I think the guilt tripper is one that can be good, because it's going to make you remember what you perceive as past failures. Okay. I know when I set my business up the first time, my partner was at that time was really stressed out that I had quit my job. And I only started my business for 3 months before he got really stressed to the point I had to close the business down and actually not work in it. So I know that when I set my second business up, or the second time round, I definitely had this guilt tripper thing as well. So it can be there, but just remember that, any failure, or what you perceive as failure, is actually an opportunity to learn, and help you in your next adventure that you're doing. And then the seventh inner critic is the conformist. So this critic tries to get you to fit into a certain mold, and it's based on standards that are held by society, culture, or your family. And it wants you to be liked and admired, and to protect you from being abandoned, shamed, or rejected. So with this one, it's almost like your inner critic knows that you've got this spark, you've got this being inside of you that is going to shine and be successful. And it almost fears it. It almost wants you to go, actually, are you going to be good enough? Are you going to be able to do it? All of those things that you guys are saying in your comments. And it will just get you to stop. It will get you to conform. So it's almost like if you step out of your comfort zone, then it's going to get you to go, no, it's going to get you to conform back to what society wants of you, of what your culture wants of you, of what your community and your friends and family want of you. Yeah. So they're the 7 types. If you guys can put in the chat while I just catch my breath and find something I want to share with you, which one you guys resonate with, or all of them. I'll flick them again just so you guys can be refreshed. So we've got the conformist, got the guilt tripper, the destroyer, the underminer, taskmaster, inner controller, and perfectionist. So add those in. Just have a look. Yeah, a bit of all. Carolina, yeah, absolutely. You can totally have a mix of all of them. Yeah. Bit of all. Awesome. All right. There's just something I want to share with you that I haven't put in the slides. So if you can, I want you to write it down, because it's really, really powerful, and it's something that's really helped me rewire some of this stuff. And I've written it on a little sheet. It's 6 steps, and I just want to share them with you, or not even steps, just 6 things. And I keep it like everywhere where I can see it. I've written it out, or printed it out. You can do whatever you want with it. And I've placed it around the house as well, as a bit of a reminder, when I want to hit certain goals, and when my inner critic comes in. So if everyone's got something to write on, I will share this with you. And it's not on a slide, so forgive me for that. So number 1 is writing causes thinking. I'll keep the chat function open on the side if anyone's got questions as we do this. So number 1, writing causes thinking. Number 2, thinking creates an image. Number 3, the image stirs emotions. Number 4, emotions causes action. Number 5, action sets up a reaction. Which leads to number 6, which is new and improved results and you. So the reason I want you guys to write that is that it's really important to, when we have the inner critic, to get into writing mode. I'm going to share with you a little bit about what I mean there. So I'll just repeat that whenever you write, it causes you to think, okay? It's just a natural neurological response. And when you think, you create an image in your mind, okay? You might have heard of that whenever you think of something, it automatically creates an image. So if I say the word feather, for example, your mind isn't going to spell the words F, or it's not going to see the words Feather. It's going to see a feather. Yeah. So it will actually, thinking about something will cause an image or create an image. And this is where the powerful subconscious work can be done, where we can recreate our subconscious patterns and thoughts. The next one is the image stirs emotion. So whenever you have that image in your mind, it will create an emotion, whether it's a positive one, a negative one, a neutral one. It's a neurological response that the image will create, you know, an emotion. The emotion actually then causes you to take action. So what you feel will either do two things. It will make you work towards your goals, yeah, and step out of your comfort zone, or it will keep you in your comfort zone and get you to procrastinate. So that in itself is action too, right? Doing nothing is action. So um, the emotion is going to cause action. But if you take positive action in the right direction, then it's going to set up a reaction, because that reaction will be like a snowball where you'll be able to start getting the momentum. As you get the momentum, remember I said to you earlier that forget about the how will start to come as you do that. And have you guys noticed that whenever you start taking action, the right people just happen to come in your path, the right connections are made. Um, you know, it's fascinating that the right people will come. I've noticed that with my business, and I think you'll notice that with yours as well as you start growing. And if you do, let me know, share that, because I know that I've created certain things and I've like, I don't know who's going to help me with the tech side of this or this side of that, and always someone will come in my path that's going to help me because I've taken action towards that goal. So, a couple of things on how we can change our inner critic. So, you've got to be able to observe how the self criticism operates inside you. And what I mean by that is, what are those words that are coming up? So, just like you guys started articulating, I want you to do an activity for me. And if you do it, I promise you it will help you, but you've got to do it regularly for 21 days, okay? And for 21 days, I want you to have a notebook with you, or you can do it on your phone, whatever format you want to do it in. Write down all of those inner critics that come up, even if it's the same ones that come up for you, what they are for a period of 21 days, okay? It's really important that you do that. Second one is be aware of anger at yourself that seems out of proportion to what happened. So sometimes we can't hear our inner critic because we have got so much going on, we are overwhelmed. One of the ways to really tap in that there is a voice is if you find yourself really angry or frustrated at things that you shouldn't be. So if you are snapping at your kids, your partner, you feel overwhelmed, you feel frustrated, take a moment, as cliched as that sounds, I know, but take a moment and self-reflect, and I promise you there will be an inner voice that is causing that anger, okay? But because you're not aware of it, or that inner voice is just whispering to you at that moment in time, and the emotion of anger is overtaking that and you can't hear it, you're missing out on the message. So if you find yourself in that state of you don't know why you're frustrated, you don't know why you're snappy, think about what your inner voice is saying to you, because it's definitely there. It's got to figure out what it's trying to say to you. When the inner critic starts pounding away, and it can, I want you to turn to your inner nurturer as a refuge and an ally, because we do have this other side of us that we can be kind, we can be compassionate, but we don't really lean into that because we're so used to just operating on autopilot, operating on default. So it's really important that we tap into the inner nurturer when we need to. Number four, I was a barrister, so I'm going to do this all the time, but you do have to argue against your inner critic. One of the things I want you to do after you've done to link point number 1 and 4 is when you've done for 21 days, how your inner critic is coming up for you and you've written it for 66 days afterwards. And again, I know it's a lot. I know when I had to do it in my training, I was like, oh, got another thing to do, but it is actually transformational, the change that you will get. So do it. So for 66 days, what I want you to do is have that list in front of you that you've got of what your inner critic is, and I want you to counteract that. I want you to think about, you know, is there evidence? Look at it from a legal point of view. Is there evidence to that inner critic? So if your inner critic says, for example, you don't deserve success, for example, if that's one of yours, you've got to write down for 66 days a counter argument to that, whether it's the same one or a different one, as to why you do deserve success. So what you're doing is you are overriding the paradigms that you have created that reinforces your inner critic. So your inner critic are literally your conditioning and patterns that you have had growing up from the age of 7. That's what that voice is. And if we don't have the self-awareness to change it, I promise you those voices will continue no matter how much success you have or how much money you have or whatever you define as success in your life, that voice isn't going to go away. So what you want to do is you want to counteract that. And we do it for 66 days. And the reason I say 66 days is because it's a neurological number. It takes 66 days for your brain to create a new neural pathway in your mind. So it's not the 21 that everyone seems to think it is about habits. It's actually 66 days. So if you ever want to do a new habit, do it continuously for 66 days and it will be reinforced neurally in your mind. Most people don't do it. It has to be continuous for 66. So if you have a break in a day, you could start it again. Yeah. So it's hard work, but it is really, really worth it. Number 5, how to also help you change this is really you can use this in your argument and in your writing for point 4 is how do other people see you? So if your inner critic is saying, you know, that you're not confident or you're not beautiful, you're not whatever, how do other people see you? And start writing that. The goal is that for those 66 days, you've got to have one sentence written a day to counteract one of your inner critic voices. There's a couple of other hacks I want to give you that aren't in this slide that I work on with my clients. One of them is around affirmations, but it's a different form of affirmation. So have you heard of 5 to 8 hertz? If you listen to any affirmation, if you put into YouTube or Google affirmations on 5 to 8 hertz, you will actually see pre-programmed affirmations. There's stuff on anxiety, there could be stuff on fear, wealth mastery, anything. There's loads of them. But it has to be on 5 to 8 hertz, which is a certain type of frequency that helps reprogram your negative thoughts and your mind. So yeah, have a look. If you just Google it, there's heaps of them. It has to be 5 to 8. And there's also 5 to 8 sounds as well, like in meditation songs and themes without words, in just instrumental, if you are not someone that likes to hear words before you go to bed. But if you can do the 5 to 8, and if you look at the research in 5 to 8 as well, hertz, you will see that it's actually cured people from anxiety. It's cured people from having depression. It's taken people off medication. It will literally rewire some of those ingrained feelings of negativity that we have. So do that. I do mine every single day. The one that I've got is about 40 minutes, but I don't do the whole 40 minutes. I will break it up into 2 parts and do it twice a day. Sometimes I might do it during the day. Sometimes I might do it at night before bed. You can get shower speakers. Sometimes I'll put it on in the morning when I'm in the shower with the speakers there. At any time you do it, it's really important that you do it on a regular basis. So if you feel you're not in a position at the moment to make time for it, then don't start it. But If you can commit to that, if you can commit to the 21 days of writing what the inner critic is, commit to the 66 days of counteracting that and writing one sentence to disprove the inner critic. And if you can, for 66 days, listen to something that's on 5 to 8 hertz with a positive affirmation, you will be blown away at the transformation that you have with that. We ran this session a couple of weeks ago, a month ago, for a group of people with the same content, and I've had messages since then saying that the stuff that's happened to them since has been phenomenal. So give it a go. Um, so they're my top three suggestions that I think you guys should be doing and should be using. Has anyone seen, and I've forgotten the guy's name, he's done this experiment on water crystals. So I'll find the link in a minute and share it with you guys. But he basically spoke to water. So he had glasses of water and spoke words to water for a period of, I think it was 20 something days. And then they analyzed the crystals and the cells of the water under microscope. And I'll come back to you in a minute, Adith. And it literally changed the structure of the water. So they had words like hate. They had words like I love you. And if you look, I'm going to find the link for you guys because it's really phenomenal. And if you look at the shape of the water cell, it is phenomenal what they've done. Yeah. Um, and how different it looks. And the reason I want to share that with you is we are water. So if that's happening to water, can you imagine what's happening to our cells in terms of the words that we say and do for ourselves? It's pretty phenomenal. Yeah. Words used. Give me 1 second because I really want to share this with you. Okay, I'm just going to put it in the chat who it is so you guys can Google him. And if you just put this name in, you can have a look and you just click into Google Images. It will show you what the differences are. And that's what's happening within our body with what we are speaking to ourselves, which is why I'm so passionate about changing the inner critic. Adith, does it take 66 days to build the habit? Both. So you can use the 66 days to create a new neural pathway. So you can do something to counteract a negative belief by rewiring that same sentence into a positive one. Or if you want to just build a habit like, not eat sugar or quit smoking, you have to do it for 66 days. The trick is if you fail, it's okay. If you miss a day, it's fine, but you have to go back to day one. Okay, so your neural pathways need 66 days continuously of the thing that you are doing, whether that's giving up a habit or creating a new one. Any other questions? Got a little bit of time. Any questions about any of the content? Who's going to give it a go? Who's going to try it for 66 days? Awesome. And that's the 5 to 8 hertz. So like I said, you can put in words or not words. The actual sounds of it will actually help neurologically as well. So it will bring that calmness. It will also raise your awareness to your inner critic as well. If you don't have that awareness of what it's saying to you, the key is you're not going to change it, right? You're not going to be able to stop the inner critic happening, but we can get the inner critic to start becoming more compassionate in what it's telling you, for sure. It works. And there are going to be times where you are going to do something new and that inner critic is going to start screaming at you. And what will happen is as you build up your practice of this training, you will be able to counteract that and release that feeling a lot quicker. Yeah, because what happens is when you get that feeling of the inner critic, you can all know the emotions, right? You feel upset, you feel sad, you feel deflated. They're quite negative emotions. And if you don't have the awareness, then you can sit in those negative emotions for a really long period of time, and you don't want to be doing that. So by doing this practice, what you will be able to do is actually, um, yeah, be able to move those emotions pretty quickly and shift them. Yeah. So that's the goal. That's what we want to be achieving. Any other questions? Got 10 minutes.
Cool. So yeah, we have a question from Aaron Pereira. He's asking, is there a way we differentiate or better identify between the inner critic and our thoughts?
Oh, that's a really, really good question. There isn't a difference, to be honest. So that thing that you hear are your thoughts. I guess the differentiator is how it makes you feel. Yeah. So if it's making you feel uncomfortable or unpleasant, then that's your inner critic trying to get your attention. It's probably the best way to explain it. And one of the best analogies I love for emotions, going back to the EQ aspect of things, is emotions are continuously going to happen. We're not going to be in a state where we don't have emotions. So think of it as the sky. Yeah, the sky is always going to be there, and emotions is the different weather that comes in, whether it's hail, storms, whatever that looks like. But eventually it's going to pass, and that weather is going to change.
Fantastic. People have seen quite a lot of questions. The next one is from Adith, and he asks, are there different approaches to challenging different inner critics?
Yeah, not really. Use because what you want to do with your brain there, Adith, is use one method. So to rewire neurologically and create new neurons in your brain. So it isn't what the inner critic is saying, it's the fact that we want to change that negative inner critic into a positive thought. So the approach is to counteract that with evidence and keep telling yourself that it's not true. And the 66 days is key. So, yeah, you don't have to change the approach depending on what the inner critic is. And I think it's also important to note that why do we have so much of the inner critic is it's our paradigm. So when we have fear, when we do something that we're not used to, that inner critic is just trying to protect us. So it's just there, and you've got to have your own way of counteracting that. I wear this necklace that I've had engraved, and it says faith over fear. So for me, it's always fear is always going to be there. Like we're evolving, we're growing all the time, and as we're growing as humans and life is changing, world is changing, fear is going to happen, right? It's a human emotion, but you're going to have faith, and faith in whatever that means for you. So for me, my faith is in myself as a being to know that I am more powerful than my fear. And I have an acronym for fear. You might have heard of it, but I'm going to put it here. Um, and I keep reminding myself this. That's what fear is, right? It's our brain just tricking us with evidence that isn't real. Yeah. So you've just got to remember that it's faith over fear. And then once you learn that, there's very little that will scare you. There's very little that will rattle you. And trust me, before I learned EQ and specialized in it, I was all over the shop with my, thoughts, my patterns, my moods. But now I'm on a constant state of almost neutral. It would take a lot for me to feel rattled, for me to feel nervous, edgy. That doesn't mean I don't get my inner critic. Don't get me wrong, I get it all the time. I get it weekly. But I'm just more in tune with knowing what my inner critic is saying, and I can shift it really quickly. So it will never go away because it's there to protect us. But rather than worry about that inner critic's message and not sleep or impact how I am around my child or my friends, I'm able to shift it really, really quickly to go, hey, that ain't true. I'm just feeling that at the moment because I'm scared or something's happening to me right now and I don't know what it is.
Fantastic. I think that kind of covers Tan's question as to why we have them. So the next question will be from Aziz, and he is asking, would you conclude on the three practices that might be used for 66 days?
Yes. So a 5 to 8 hertz affirmation track that you can get from Google, YouTube, they're all free. Anything that is 5 to 8, and everyone will have different words on it based on what you're feeling at the moment in time. So on my phone, I think I've probably got about No joke, I've got about 70 different ones depending on my mood. So there's one around anxiety, there's one around fear, there's one around creating money, there's one around sales mastery. Like I got all different ones. So listen to a 5 to 8. You don't have to listen to the same one for 66 days, Aziz. You could, as long as you're listening to something for 66 days. That is definitely one practice. The second practice is to be more present. So really be aware of when your inner critic comes up and go, hey, I know what you're saying. Thank you for that. I do that all the time. I'll be like, I'll catch myself and go, thank you for reminding me that this is a problem because I need to actually address it. That'll be the second tactic. And the third one is really important. For 21 days, you have to write what your inner critic is saying, because if you don't understand what your inner critic is saying, you can't change it.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. We have a technical question. Aaron is asking, is emotional intelligence specific to psychological aspects, or does it have environmental influence?
Yeah, both. You can raise your EQ. So it's you're not born with how well developed your EQ is. So you can work on it. It's definitely psychological in terms of your upbringing, and your paradigms and your habits and your parents. They play that, contribute to that, and it's also environmental of the people that you surround yourselves with. So, yeah, if you are surrounding yourselves with people that are constantly pulling you down, constantly doubting you, that is 100% going to have an effect on your EQ. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Adith is asking, does awareness lead to behavioral change? For example, you could be aware of your inner critic, but in a real situation, you may not be able to practice it.
I don't think that you can't practice it. I think it's getting into the habit, right? So, over time, it will lead to behavioral change. I'm living proof of it. A lot of my clients are. I think it's a case of, can you dedicate um, 10 or 15 minutes a day to work on your EQ and give the time that you need to rewire some of your conditions and patterns. And I think if anyone says, no, I can't give that time, I think they're not interested or are wanting to do it at that moment in time. And again, no judgment for that. But when you are ready to make that behavioral change, just commit. So when I started with 10 minutes a day. That's all. And now I've increased to about an hour a day of working on myself, from my mindset point of view. And for me now, it's a non-negotiable. It becomes not even a habit, but almost like a ritual, like brushing your teeth or going for a shower. It's like that 1 hour that I work on myself, which is split throughout the day. It's not 1 hour in a block, is sort of my non-negotiable. Yeah.
Amazing. Nishant is, he says, often the inner critic is powered up by success bombing from friends and colleagues, even when you understand life works differently for every individual. The sudden urge to rush things in life starts overpowering. How can this be counteracted?
Yeah, I love that question. I'm going to sum it up in saying that your chapter 2 can't be compared to someone else's chapter 21. Yeah, so everyone is going to be in a different chapter of life. You can look at someone and feel that overwhelm, you can feel that rush to catch up, but it's happened to me 100% when I've been starting my own business. Even now, it happens to me. I look around and on LinkedIn, there's people that have had, better successes than I have had. And I'm like, why am I not there yet? Why have I not got there? And I just look at them, and you know what? The first thing I do is I have gratitude for where I am in my journey, because there's always someone that would kill to be in the position you're in. Always, always, always. We're just not aware of it. So always have gratitude for Nishant for where you are right now in your journey. And when you look at other people, really look at them and go, wow, with gratitude that they've worked to a certain level to get there and it's their time. Your time is coming too. Doesn't mean it's not going to be there.
Okay, amazing. Thank you. Another question. Sorry if it's out of topic, but really curious. Coming from a doctor's stance, can emotional exercise improve patient compliance?
Yeah, it can, Aaron. We can talk offline. Actually, one of the areas I specialize in is dental EQ. So I work with dentists a lot. And for two reasons, more around treatment acceptance, but also around the actual dental practice owner and their success from an EQ point of view. So you've got my email address, shoot me a note and I'll take it offline with you.
Amazing. Guys, if anyone has any more questions, shoot them now. You must have done a good job because everyone's silent.
Thank you guys. I really hope that helped. I'm open to any questions you've got, even if you think of something offline. I'm more than happy for you to email me directly and I will respond. More than happy to do that. I know that when I've done sessions like this at night laying in bed, I've gone, shit, I wish I'd asked that, or how does that work? So if you do today, tomorrow, I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you have.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ush, for sharing with us all your wisdom and knowledge as always.
Pop my email address in the chat. There you
Beautiful.
go. Yep. Happy to answer any questions. Oh gosh, someone's just trying to join now at the end of the session.
Oh no.
Wrong. Thank you guys. Hit me up if you've got any questions. Thank you so much. And I look forward to connecting with you guys.
Thank you, Ush.
Thanks.
See you
Bye.
guys soon.
Bye.